What's up, everyone? Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilba. With me is Chris Therington. Taking a look at the Sony Open on DraftKings. We kind of really got underway this past weekend when, PGA bouncing back up. We got the big tournaments on DraftKings. It feels good. It's earlier in the year. It feels a lot more fresher, I think, starting earlier compared to last few years.
Yeah, there's just a lot of more hype now with Tiger coming back, and especially with DJ just going away with the Tournament of Champions last week. It's just going to be one of those years where it looks like all the popular name golfers and the best in the world are going to win a lot. So going forward, maybe you just kind of have to play the guys on DraftKings that are up in salary and see if one of them will win. And I think this year that's going to happen more times than not. You're not going to see not too many first timers like the past few years. I think you're going to see a lot of DJ, a lot of Spieth, Rory potentially coming back, and then of course Tiger returning as well. I made a bold prediction a few weeks ago that Tiger's going to win a couple of tournaments before the Masters. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward for the season.
You've been on Tiger Watch for some time now because I get the notifications on our Twitter account, and it's 5 a.m. in the morning, and you're retweeting Tiger stuff right off the bat.
Yeah, it was after his surgery when his surgeon said that normally it's around this 6 to 8 months or something like that the pro athlete will recover from that fusion that Tiger had. And I just counted basically the months down, and I knew that around October, November was the time frame that, okay, you're going to start probably seeing some videos popping up. And sure enough, he started with the chip, and then with the stainer, and then with the full swing with the driver with the red and black outfit on. There was a lot of hype going into the Hero, and he actually played decently well. His swing looks good, and I'm looking forward to watching him play this year.
Yeah, he did look really good. Let's dive into Sony Open this week. What are you looking at as far as key stats go? Obviously, your article is up over on DailyFantasyCafe.com, but what are you kind of focusing in on?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go back to the basics from last year. The stats that I like to use the most would be strokes gained, par 4 scoring, strokes gained, approach the green, as well as around the green, and then the guys making birdies, as well as guys who can hit it off the tee very well. And then this year, I'm just going to look into a little bit, but basically strokes gained putting, just to see who's actually putting well on a weekly basis. That may help me decide whether that player should be in my main lineup or my secondary lineup. I think those 6 stats for the year will help me make a nice little profit overall on DraftKings.
It seems like putting just seems to be the most volatile, of the stats to kind of keep an eye on. It's not something you want to overweight, but you don't want to completely ignore it either.
No, the model that I'm using, the putting stat, I'm only basically having it exposed like 5% on the player. It's I don't know, it's different every week. So, you'll have guys like Matsuyama going into the Hero World Challenge. He had like 5 different putters or something like that, trying out on the putting green. Like, you just don't know exactly where the player's mind is at with their putting game. It's literally just like a light switch. It can go on just like that, or you can be completely off throughout the week or for the next few weeks. You just don't know. So I just like to look at it just to see who's like ranking very well and Like if it's a trend that they've been putting well, say the last 2 or 3 weeks, then I might play them. But other than that, it's just there, just as basically a support group, pretty much.
As far as lineup construction goes this week, how are you kind of approaching? Obviously, we have the cut line. We didn't have the cut last week. It's a much larger field than before. How are you kind of taking things in now?
Yeah, so this week's would be a lot easier to fade the top players just because there is a cut. Last week was a little hard to fade anyone at the top. Case in point, Dustin Johnson. He was like the third highest player in salary, and he ended up going away with it. So for this week, with Spieth and Thomas being right up there, it's a little easier now just to fade those two. It's a little hard, but I think you might have a more solid lineup construction if you decide to fade those two and move on to, like, say, a Mark Leishman, who's been more consistent, especially at this course. So, yeah, I think that's where I'm going, is just fade the top two players and be a more balanced of lineup construction.
Yeah, let's get into these double-digit, salary guys here. You have Spieth and Thomas up top. You have Leishman, Harman, Kistner, all over 10K. Harman's, been playing well. Leishman's the guy that you talk about in terms of GPP options in your article. Is Leishman the guy that you're really kind of keen in on here?
Yeah, his stats are ranking very well for me. He's ranked first in the field for making birdies. He's also in the top 10 for both approach to the green and around the green. And then when you look at his course history, I mean, he's one of the best in this field. He's made the cut basically in the last 5 years, with a couple top 10s and a T20th last year. So being the third cheapest option this week, I think Leishman might be the better bet, just to put him in a tournament lineup. He might be somewhat popular because he was playing somewhat well. Just the one bad round did him in last week. So I think I'll just go back to Leishman this week and see if you can pull it together for all 4 rounds.
Harman's playing really well. You mentioned it to me obviously before the show. I mean, a couple of top 5s here over his last 4 tournaments, 10-6 here on DK.
Yeah, and even his course history is actually pretty good. I think Harman's your cash option for this week if you want to spin up. Basically finished inside the top 20 the last 3 years. He hasn't really missed a cut since 2013, and he actually played decently well last week, surprisingly well. He was paired with DJ in the final group, and DJ kind of went away with it, but Harman still kept going, and he's actually finished very well. So I think at 10-6, he has that upside of finishing up on the leaderboard, and yeah, you'll be happy with that.
Yeah, certainly. Do you want to talk about, Spieth and Thomas, kind of speak for themselves here in terms of plays?
Yeah, if you look at the stats that I'm looking at in my model, both of them are in there, ranking in the top 10, basically in 5 of the 6 stats. So, and just to say it, Spieth and Thomas are ranking 1 and 2 in my model. It's really hard to fade them, but I think just to be more balanced, I kind of have to. It's not going to be a surprise to see them up on the leaderboard, but if just in case they have a bad couple rounds, like Thomas did last week, and even with like Spieth with his first round last week, it's like I said, this week is a lot easier to fade those two just because there is that cut now that they might miss it if they have one or two bad rounds near the start of the tournament.
Certainly. And I think, moving on here, 9,500 to 8,500, you talk about Webb Simpson in your article, but there's a handful of options I feel in this range, that can definitely contend this weekend.
Yeah, just to go back to Webb, I mean, if you look at his course history, he seems to like finishing tied for 13th. That seems to be his favorite number, I guess. He did that the last 3 years here. So, and if you look at his recent play, I mean, just to pull it up here, he actually finished very well at the first two tournaments of the season. He finished 20th at the Shriners and 17th at the Safeway. So at 9,300, I mean, it's almost a no-brainer just to start with him as your cash option and maybe pair him with Brian Harman, and that would be your core for your cash place, I think, and that's probably the best way to go. So, yeah, and the next guy up, I think Zach Johnson might be just another option as well for either cash or tournaments. Zach, I mean, he finished here the last 2 years. He finished in the top 10, T6 and T9. And then when you look at his stats, I mean, he's 8th in the field for strokes gained and par 4 scoring. So I think him and Simpson are nice cash options for this week.
As far as like the Tony Finau crowd, Daniel Berger, we saw Siwoo Kim play really well last week. Are these guys, guys that you're looking at in tournaments this weekend?
Yeah, Tony Finau is very interesting to me. I think probably more of a tournament option, if anything. He's 6th in the field for making birdies, and he's 4th in the field for off the tee. But he does that have that downside where if his putter's not there, then he's just going to miss the cut on you. So at 8,900, I think that he'll just be a nice little tournament play. And then, yeah, Berger, I just feel like a lot of people are going to be on Berger. Yeah, he finished okay last week. And at 8,700, I think, yeah, he's going to be in that range where a lot of people are just going to click his name and move on.
I mean, this is kind of a spot where I think you can, once again, like the balanced approach this weekend, there's a handful of names that have that potential to finish top 10, top 15 here. And I know this is a range that you're obviously looking at quite a bit because, you talk about Jamie Lovemark at 8,100 in your article, Ches Reavie, 8K, Gary Woodland. Like that kind of takes us into this next tier where you're kind of really focusing on building a core.
Yeah, this is pretty much my bread and butter, I think, for this week. Going to Gary Woodland at the start for 7,800. I mean, he's really good with his irons. He's 3rd in the field for approach to the green, and he's also 21st in the field for strokes gained, par 4 scoring. So at 7,800, he does have that upside for you to finish in the top 10, which is a nice value for where he is. If you look at his history, he actually finished inside the top 15 in the last 3 years with the T3rd going back to 2015. So that's really good for him. And Ches Reavie, almost the same thing. At 8,000, I don't know how popular he's going to be. Probably around that 15, 17% range, if I had to guess. He's 5th in the field for strokes gained, par 4 scoring, and he's also 22nd in the field for making birdies. And then when you look at, again, his history, he finished T8 here last year. So he has a good rapport with the course, and his stats are ranking very well for me. And I like him very much for cash as well as Woodland. And Jamie Lovemark, I think, is a good tournament play just because he's that up and down player where he might miss the cut, but he might make the cut, and he'll give you a top 5 finish, which happened here last year for him. He finished T4th. So I think at 8,100, he might be overlooked, and he might give you that edge on the weekend if he makes the weekend to finish high in the tournaments for this week.
As far as the rest of the 7K guys here, I mean, there's some decent names. JJ Spawn, 7,600. He's been a consistent option so far. Keegan Bradley, I know you want to talk about. You got some hot news on him. But, I mean, Jason Duffner, Kyle Stanley, there's some, decent guys in this lower 7K range.
Yeah, just to say it right off the bat for Bradley, if you guys watched these podcasts last year, you know that I'm a big father narrative street, and Bradley became a new dad last month. So I'm not saying put 100% on Keegan Bradley or anything like that. Maybe put him in 1 or 2 tournament lineups just in case, because it happens more times than not. For some strange reason, the next 2 or 3 months or so, a new dad will play well and or actually win a tournament. Not soon after he actually became a dad. So at 7,400, yeah, I'm going to take a chance on Bradley for a tournament lineup, basically. Yeah, I just had to say it right away.
Anyone else kind of catching your eye here in this lower 7K range?
For the lower 7K, the one guy that stands out a little bit would be Seamus Power. He did help me last year for a couple weeks in the summer. So I'm just going to go back to him for a tournament lineup, basically. He's 18th in the field for making birdies. And going back to the strokes gained putting, he's actually 10th in the field for that stat. So with that, and with making the cut here last year, I think at 7,200, that's pretty much all you want for him. He does have that upside of finishing in the top 10. So we can't really go wrong in this range for Seamus. I just like the guy. So I'm going to go back.
As far as below, 7K, there's a handful of options that are 6,600, 6,800. This field is obviously, enormous to start the year. Guys are below 7K. I know Stuart Sink is a guy that you mentioned to me prior to the show at 6,800. With him, anyone else you're kind of looking at as punt options?
Yeah, Sink to me is your cash option if you want to pick someone from this range. He's second in the field for approach the green, and he's also 14th in the field for strokes gained par 4 scoring. So that's really good for him. He's also made the cut the last 4 years here. So at 6,800, you can't go wrong there. And then the other guy I like down here is Roy Sabatini. He's at 6,600. He seems to be kind of like a Ricky Barnes in a way, where he doesn't pop often on leaderboards, but every now and then you'll see his name and you'll tell yourself, why the hell I did not pick him? And it just seems that week that Sabatini might do something. He's 18th in the field for approach to the green in the last 24 rounds. So with that, and with finishing here last year at T45th and a T6 back in 2015, I'm going to take a stab at Sabatini in a tournament lineup. I think he might have a good chance this week.
Any fades for you that you're just kind of automatically completely off, no matter the price tag this week?
I think if it goes back to the top, I think someone like Charles Howell III, he's at 8,800. I think a lot of people are going to start playing him again, just because he has that narrative that he plays well the first basically 2 or 3 months of the season, and then he falters off a little bit. I'm just going to wait for him when he comes back to like the Dean and DeLuca or Torrey Pines event. He tends to play really well at those. Yeah, he has somewhat of good course history here, but I think he's just going to be too popular, and I think Tony Finau or Cameron Smith, someone like that, might have a better shot of actually playing well, finishing inside the top 10. Better odds than CH3. So, yeah, that's the guy for me that I'm going to just fade outright.
At least his price is somewhat up this year in comparison to last year, where he was like such an auto play because he was like 70 to 400.
Yeah, if he was down like where Seamus is, like around 72, then it's almost, like you said, almost basically an automatic. It's like a 100% CH3. He has good course history. There's nothing can go wrong. Just play him. Forget about it. But now he's up here at 8,800. It's like, yeah, I think that's a little too high for my liking.
Who do you got winning this week?
I think Ches Reavie might be the guy. I really like his stats. He has decent course history the last 3 years, and he finished here in the top 10 last year, so he might take it all on Sunday.
I like that call. Bold call there. I don't think a lot of people are going to be picking him there.
No, he doesn't win that often. So I figure might as well just pick an underdog, basically.
I like it. If you want to check out Chris's article, you can head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. His GPP cash game plays for Sony Open. And we'll see you guys next week.